do yourself a favor and build a double wall.
If you don't respect my boundaries, you don't respect me. And if you don't respect me, that's fine. Again, back to no sense of obligation, but I will not tolerate disrespect.
Mm,
You don't owe me anything, but you dang sure ain't going to take something from me
hmm.
that I value. And that's what disrespect does. Hey human, Coach Nate here with another mindful focus for you. The last time we talked about the power of setting boundaries to prioritize your mental health. This is part 2 of that discussion. Hopefully you've had a chance to listen to part 1. If not, highly recommend you go back and give that a listen and then join us for this part 2, which is a continuation of a very insightful conversation, frank, direct, about boundary setting, why it's important, the benefits that you gain from it. Join me as we have a discussion with my special guest, Coach Maria.
No, exactly. I think important point, that you bring up, like you didn't mention the word, but there's there's kind of this sense of obligation with
Mm,
family.
yes.
There's and not only with family, like I've the way we build relationships sometimes can
Mhm.
be without boundaries. And so
Yeah.
there's this kind of sense of obligation
Mhm.
and entitlement and like,
Mhm.
well, obviously this is what's supposed to be done, right?
Right,
And it's
right.
like, well, I mean, and at this point in my life, or with all due respect, there's nothing obvious about anything. And there's nothing uh out of obligation,
Hmm.
whoever that person is. Now, I respect those people that have, and for lack of a better, I don't know how to say this gracefully, but a martyr soul.
Hmm.
I grew up with a few
Hmm.
around me,
Hmm.
which is kind of like, all this we all sacrifice for, and it's like, no, 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 no.
I used to be one.
I need to be fine to be able to branch out and provide you with anything.
Hmm.
So I think that's an important point to make, kind
Very.
of like, because there's this perception of there are some relationships that are out of obligation, and it's a hard process to set boundaries, but again, comes back to self and doing the work and what it brings up to us, and kind of that, because it opens up a lot of Pandora boxes,
Oh, yes, it does.
like,
Yes, it
oh my
does.
gosh, like what if they stop talking to me,
Hmm.
and what if they never love me again, and what if I'm not enough for anybody.
Hmm.
But this is all like, again, this needs for you to sit with your board. This has nothing to do with the other people. These are things that are signaling you to do a certain type of work.
Hmm.
They have nothing to do with the other people. The other people, and this is kind of, getting into philosophy about life and whatever, but the other people are just kind of those things that spark these things for you to heal.
Hmm.
I mean, if you believe in karmic existence and what this is kind of, it lights that up so I can heal this in this lifetime and then
Right.
not go into next lifetime and do this story again.
Yeah.
So I always say, I mean, and this has become a joke at this point with my family. We're Mexican, and we're boundaries are hard to,
Mhm.
enforce. So for me, I'm the oddball and the kind of like she's doing it again, you know, and it's like, yeah, forever I will do it. But it's funny how, yeah, guys, like we need to resolve this in this moment so we don't repeat this in the other lifetime.
You're the
And I'm not going to
generational.
come back and have this conversation in another lifetime. So let's have it right now. And it's
You're
like, oh my
you're the
gosh.
generational curse breaker.
Yes. Yes. But you know what I'm talking, you
Yeah,
know,
totally,
it's kind of
totally.
that the other people are there, are characters to spark these things in us so we can resolve them in ourselves.
Hmm.
And that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
But I'm
If
sorry, I get into these
no,
tangents.
that's fine. It's all so there's just so much to it, and it's also intricate so what you basically one point of that piece is the worry about they're not going to love me anymore. That goes back to if me setting my boundary,
Mhm.
if you setting your boundary that is for your mental health and your peace and your well-being causes the relationship with someone else to end, was there ever a relationship? Did
Ooh.
did they really value you for who you are? Because if you value another human being, what you want most for them is what they want for themselves. That you want them to have their peace and well-being. That's not a negative. It's very different than if they were um, had a substance use disorder and they were engaging in the use of that substance and you didn't want them. We're talking about the polar opposite. We're talking about something that's peace, that well-being, something that is life sustaining, that helps them. Why would I not want that for another individual? So if I'm not going to love them anymore because they want peace, eh, you know, that that tells you the value, the truth of that relationship.
Yeah, which is also so hard to accept for a lot of people.
Absolutely, yes.
Because again, this brings it down to what it is.
The truth.
And some of us can't handle the truth.
Much more comfortable here in the land of denial.
Yeah. Oh, in La La Land. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. There was another part to that. Oh, thank you. There was a question. Does is does one human being actually ever have an obligation to another human being? When we're talking about energy, it again a hard truth. There may be traditions, expectations, but obligation is a strong word. And what you spoke to, when we get to the place where we realize the truth, no one owes me anything.
Hmm.
No one has any obligation. No human being on the face of this planet has any obligation to me. They are their own being,
Entity. Uh-huh.
entity, just as I am. Just that's a starting point of accepting that truth. Nobody owes you anything.
Hmm.
You may in your mind set that expectation. You may have created it. And there was a graphic, a picture, image I saw the other day that
Hmm.
was we with our expectations build these prisons that we put ourselves in, and each expectation is a bar. Okay, I have this expectation of you, that's a bar, and I have this expectation of you, and that's a bar,
Hmm.
and now we have built a cell, a prison cell around ourselves with our expectations of others.
A beautiful golden cage.
Right. And so the freeing part, and here's where the rubber hits the road and where that becomes easier to embrace, is that's a two-way street.
Hmm.
No one, I it, it, it I in turn am not obligated to anybody else either. No one owes me anything, and I don't owe anybody else anything. And that
Yes.
helps me then to set my boundaries. Two-way street. You don't owe me respect, and I don't owe you respect. I may choose to give it. I may choose to provide it. I may choose to act, behave in a certain way that happens to align with your expectation, but I don't owe you that, just like you don't owe me anything. So now I am free to move about the, there used to be the travel thing. You're free to move around the country. Now I'm free to live my
Mm-hmm.
life, free of having any expectations from others and free of the bondage of them having expectations of me, that I'm going to give my energy
Mm.
freely to the point of depletion without charge, and not even a thank you. And it's a perspective shift,
Mm-hmm.
but just what helps us with the boundary setting is knowing that when we dispel this myth of obligation.
Mm-hmm. And I think, this raises awareness for us to be able to also notice where we've established alliances with things and people.
Mm.
Because again, going into the deep karmic stuff, kind of those contracts we've established with people and things, and just unspoken threads we've created with
Mm.
certain things,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the stories we tell ourselves about anything and everything. And so, hard truth, but yes, I don't know you, you don't owe me. And the freedom of what boundaries do is it allows us to have those alliances consciously.
Right.
If I want to give you my time, I
Mm-hmm.
can give you my time.
Right.
If I want to answer your text, I'll answer your text. If
Right.
I want to, but then it's kind of like I don't have to do it, and so I do it with joy.
Intentional.
It's that it's that intentional living,
Yes.
and part of cultivating boundaries, a part of cultivating that intentional living, that curating your experience, that
Mm-hmm.
being able to establish the pathways for a peaceful existence.
Mm-hmm.
In as much as we can, because I mean, let's be realistic. Shit happens, and life is crazy,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of things that we cannot control.
Right.
But then there are other things, again, with time, with money, with emotions, with mentally, that we can set up that can help us navigate the other stuff that we don't control.
Totally. If it's not a matter of life, that text isn't a matter of life and death and something I can do about it. And it probably wouldn't be a text at that point. It would be a phone call.
Yeah.
Um, then I could be resentful for feeling obligated to respond because you have an expectation that I owe you that response when I really don't feel like it. I may be in a no device time period of self care where do not disturb was one of the greatest iPhone features, and it pissed more people off than what do you mean your phone's in do not disturb? Okay, just unpack that stick. My phone is
If I'm
set
not disturbed,
so
mine,
I
mine.
am not being disturbed. Where's you in that? Oh, you're on the other side of me not being disturbed. Yeah, that's good. That's kind of where I want you.
Yeah.
Well, who am I? Well,
I have direct experience with that. I rarely, at this point, I genuinely almost have like block time in to answer my text and stuff.
mm,
Like
yes.
I um and when it comes to social media, I very limited,
Mhm.
and then years ago I gave up WhatsApp and Facebook and
Yeah.
all of that. And I remember, I mean, oh my God, it raised hell with people.
Wow.
What do you mean? Like, how are you going to function? And I'm like, oh, that you don't have to worry about that.
Quite healthily,
I'm
thank you.
perfectly functional. It was funny to me how they were, and that's why I made it a point to say in the beginning, like the people who mostly benefit from you not having boundaries are the people who are usually going to protest.
The question is that
But you got to do what you got to do, and you got to do what is fitting and beneficial for you. And I mean, I still get it. Like people are like, I tried to send you a WhatsApp and it declined. Like you don't have WhatsApp, and I'm like, nope. What era do you live in? And I'm like, oh, I'm not interested in keeping up with eras, dude. Like if we were if we were talking about, no, no.
what world do you
I'm
live in? Not
seriously.
yours.
Yeah, like, and I think that's a big part of it when establishing boundaries, what makes people doubt them and think about it and resist to them. It's
Mhm.
like, what are the other people going to think?
Yeah. Yes. 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 Yes.
What are my friends going to say when I'm not available? What are my and I mean, one, the non-easy access makes it more interesting because now they're like, oh my God, I'm just going to text her to see when she answers. And that's one thing. It increases your ratings. No, I'm just kidding. But it's funny. It's a funny effect. And then over time you do like it's a good strategy,
Mhm.
so I think again the process in the beginning, it's hard and
Sure.
people struggle, and I understand that kind of bubble that comes up of like, what are people going to think? Or,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I'm not going to be as popular or whatever if I tell them that I can't go tonight, then I'm going to take the night for myself or whatever. Like whatever boundary you're thinking about.
Right.
At work,
Mm.
at work. Perfectly. You're invited to 1,000 projects
Mm-hmm.
and you're kind of like, well, I don't have the bandwidth, but I'm going to do it. What good is this? We need to ask ourselves what the cost benefit.
What are you spending energy you don't have, and
Uh-huh.
what are you getting in return?
Mhm.
And if it's net negative, why?
Or maybe not even so negative, but it's like genuinely, I don't have the time. And I need to like, uh, I need to clean my house today, or I have other priorities. I have a life and I have a certain amount of energy.
Mhm.
I have all these things to do, and I need to make sure I get to all of them.
Right.
This is my way.
So if you spend that energy that you don't have, or the energy that you've reserved, boundary, for
Mm.
other areas on that initiative, now you're going to need to go find that energy elsewhere to accomplish those other things, or they're not going to get done. And then if they don't get done, the mental impact of your thinking about, and then it could turn into, why did I do that? Why did I
Uh-huh.
spend that energy there? Why did I get a $12 cup of coffee when I shouldn't even have bought the $6 cup of coffee?
Correct. Like,
When you're right.
I
And
mean, was the latte worth it?
not after, it gets cold. And
Exactly.
it's so funny. They ask the question, how are you going to function? They answered their own question. You are going to function, as opposed to the question should have been, how are you going to dysfunction? Because
Mm,
it
mm,
is dysfunctional to continually and repeatedly subject yourself to potential triggers, a meteor shower of triggers, social media, that could send your mind in places. They talk about the dopamine fixers, even studies now that talk about the negative impacts on kids who jump on social media too soon and spend too much time there. It was already a challenge when middle schoolers and even high schoolers were comparing themselves to others, but you had to show up to school to do that. Now you can do
yeah.
it 24/7 and
Mm.
only see the best parts. You don't see the slips ups or when somebody's got a booger in their nose, right? You only on the social media, you're only seeing the glam, and then you begin to the mind begins, oh, that's the norm, and that's that person's life, and then the comparison comes in, and I don't believe we've even begun to see the negative impacts of that, the influence of too much social media on the in the youth and what it has done to them psychologically on both fronts. For the narcissists or the people that are looking for attention, um, in that it's a source,
Mm.
and then it gives them a false sense of perception of who they are in elevation. In other words, prom kings get to continue on with that very small slice for an extended period of time, but
Mm.
it's a facade and it's unhealthy. And then those that are it's negative impacting their self-esteem and their self-confidence. Very unpopular message. How many
Yeah.
people just stop listening to the podcast just based off of that? Don't take away my dopamine. I got to scroll. And
Well, yeah. I mean, you bring up a macro level concern because especially right now where so many people are concerned about being burnt out and not having time about anything and like you propose. I mean, as a coach I have conversations about this all the time and proposing okay possible changes you could make and then it's like, well, I don't have time. Okay, well, how many hours do you spend on your cell phone? And it's like, oh, 5, but you don't understand. Like, I have to. And it's like, do you have to? So it's kind of speaking of boundaries. I mean, one of the tiniest changes you could make towards improving your life would be maybe spending a little less time on your cell phone and a little more quality time with yourself or your loved ones or doing things that you actually have to do.
right.
Because if you are spending 20 hours on your cell phone and your bed's not made and your laundry's not done and you haven't showered and you haven't cleaned your bathroom and you haven't, then dude, we've got shit to do
Yeah.
other than being on our phone.
Hmm. Healthy things, movement.
Well,
It,
basic stuff.
right. But just the act of going through those things you just mentioned, you're actually not physically moving. And when we physically move, what they call the protein that is released from our muscles, called I think they call it the hope molecule, literally sends a signal to the brain that helps lift the mood. You, folding laundry, think of
Mm-hmm.
those type, but sitting stagnant in a spot, scrolling, dopamine, but then when that goes away, it's just very unhealthy.
Yeah.
And there's so many, and then it's kind of what touching on the benefits of setting boundaries,
Mm.
the impact to reducing our level of stress, increasing our self-esteem and self-confidence, helping us to respect ourselves, which in turn helps us to and here's what I'll say: respect others, respect that that person is behaving in that manner, probably because of the internal struggle that they're going through, and is not a reflection on me, but more what they're challenged with. So now I'm not going to take it personally,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole of beating myself up because that person is having a bad day, but it has nothing to do with me. Um, you talked about, investing in ourselves, taking time
Mm-hmm.
for ourselves, sometimes just sitting in peace and quiet, allowing ourselves to, though these are all energy rebuilding, restorative, rejuvenating. Sometimes doing nothing is doing something for ourselves to help us to
Yes.
recuperate from bad days, bad work days, bad, challenging, difficult, toxic interactions, conversations, things that we have to do. All of that helps to reduce our level of burnout, depletion,
Mm-hmm.
hitting the brick wall, and then improves our health overall, which in turn improves our relationship with ourselves, which in turn improves our relationships with others. So there's just a couple of two or three benefits.
A couple. I have nothing to add to that. I think you said it best. Um, yeah, that's basically what it is. It improves your life in general and in ways that optimize the experience.
Mm-hmm.
It takes you from that catching up survival mode to really a space where you can choose and pick and and then it taps into your self-efficacy. Once you see yourself doing that, then you're like, oh, cool. And then like you said, like people start watching that and they're like, damn, she's got it together. Okay. I can only call her at certain times,
Yeah.
or I can only, this is how far I can push the envelope, and then it's out. And then so you start treating yourself in a way where you show yourself that respect and
Mm-hmm.
that honor, and
Mm-hmm.
then it just transpires to the other spaces of
Absolutely.
your life.
Absolutely. People are good. No one's going to respect you more than you respect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
sometimes we have to
modeling positive behavior.
modeling boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I'm setting these with me. I have set them with myself, and I'm setting them with you. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a great point. If we don't set those boundaries for ourselves and adhere to those, what expectation do we have that others will respect those boundaries if we're not respecting them?
Correct.
When you were talking, it made me think of, if we look at it, let me see if I get this right. If boundaries were like money, and I have this business and this other person has a business, what sense does it with the aim of creating, generating profits, revenue, income, and benefiting financially in these two businesses? What sense would it make for me to take my money and invest it into their business instead of my own? And again, looking at both of those have the same ability to grow, to develop.
Mm-hmm.
They have the same perspectives, the same performance. They're they're virtually. It isn't like one is going to perform better than the other. They
Mm-hmm.
can perform equally. So would it make any sense for me to invest my money into their business versus investing into my own? Because they're going to get the benefit of. I have no ownership in that business, by the way. It's
Mm-hmm.
all theirs. There's nothing
Yeah.
contractually right. So boundaries are just that, taking those, and it's like putting money into my, investing into my own business, and I will then reap the benefits of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it just, when you said that, it popped into my head. Now that could be indigestion from what I had for breakfast, but it just seems like it made sense to. Boundaries are not our enemy. Boundaries are not
No,
weapons to use to hurt others. Some people will
correct.
try to use the word.
I was going to say it's been weaponized, and for some reason, that was my question to you, actually. I was going to say, when do you think, or why do you think it caught such bad fame?
Because people were butthurt about not having unlimited access to a
Mm,
source of free of charge for their own edification, use, disposal. And so now I need to take this healthy behavior, which is what we see again and again and again and again, talking about mental health. Oh, it's taboo. Oh, that person's crazy. All of the negative when a person's trying to heal. Anyway, so let's talk about boundaries. So let me take this and I need to weapon it. I need to make it a negative thing because it
mm.
cut off my supply.
Yeah. Oh, great point. Well, okay.
I need to change the narrative. Narcissists are really good at that. I need
Hmm.
to control the narrative and I need to change it at all costs in anything and everything that I can use to turn, twist, contort, change, tell half truths,
Hmm.
paint, and to make sure that I am in control of the narrative. So, as a narcissist, I am not exposed for being the inept, shallow, in, um, insecure,
Hmm.
manipulative. There's a long list of things. It's maniacal, but that that I'm going to extreme, right? It's not just narcissists to do that, but it, that's the example. They'll take whatever that may be positive and weaponize it for their own gain and good. Again, we're talking about people who turn the word boundary into a negative. They suffered a loss. They suffered the loss of free access, free energy,
Hmm.
almost in an unending supply of others. They don't like it.
Hmm.
Then that they're those aren't your people.
Yeah.
Because anybody who cared about you would be championing, cheerleading, supporting. How can I help? Absolutely, I want to respect that. If that gives you peace of mind, if that's going to, all of those benefits, if that's going to help you to live a more fulfilling, peaceful, enjoyable life, I'm, because I care about you, I'm all for that boundary. Totally makes sense. You do what you need to do for you. Anything other than an enthusiastic response, question the relationship
Hmm.
and possibly create more distance and reinforce and build up the
Do yourself
boundary.
a favor. Do yourself a favor and build a double wall.
If you don't respect my boundary, you don't respect me. And if you don't respect me, that's fine. Again, back to no sense of obligation, but I will not tolerate disrespect.
Mm.
You don't owe me anything, but you dang sure ain't going to take something from me
Hmm.
that I value. And that's what disrespect does. That's probably 3 podcasts. But
As usual.
uh so have we I think we've covered a lot of ground.
Oh, we definitely have. I
Okay.
mean, I think it's the gist of it is obviously they're good for us. They've caught a bad name, but again, I think it's bringing it back to self, you know, knowing what you need, assessing your energy levels, and going from there. It's always a personal work, and then how and then you branch out from there. Um, even when it comes to establishing a dynamic with somebody else, whatever it brings up, has nothing to do, like whatever it brings up internally for you has nothing to do with the other person. It's more about you kind of figuring that out and what it means to you and to your own growth and to your own process. And so embracing that, embracing sort of that framework,
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't, then you're going to start questioning and doubting yourself, and back to a cycle and a loop, and depending on the external source of how others evaluate you, which should be unimportant.
Should be. So when a client
Should
asks
be
you,
unimportant.
when a client asks you, when you said knowing what you need, how do I figure that out? What do you tell them?
Um, for me, I mean, I always, and this is, I sound like a broken record. You you have to sit and write and journal and ask yourself these questions and truly, what do I need? I need to have my 3 meals a day. I need to work out daily. I need to use the restroom daily. I need to shower daily. Like these are my basics, you have to know your basics.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a rule of thumb is don't base your basics on other people.
Mm.
Like I know you have children and you have your partner or your husband or your wife or whatever, and you have work, and again, we have multiple aspects of our life.
Mm-hmm.
So what do I need? Most of what I get when I like, okay, if you don't want to journal about it, what do you need? They're like, well, I want to feel at peace. Okay, if you want to feel at peace, which is, I mean, I think it's a very human thing to want and a high aspiration to have. What are some things that we need to put in place for you to be at peace?
Yes.
And I think we go back again to, and we've discussed this before, acceptance, honesty, willing to go through the process of change, which brings discomfort. Um, being realistic about it, like it's not going to happen tomorrow.
Mm.
We've been working on this wiring for 30 something years now. Like we're not going to change. Like I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and it's like, oh my God, magically my
Oh,
everything
really?
changed. um yeah, I would say that's the process. It's a lot of thinking, it's a lot of honest work, it's a lot of reflection. um it's a lot of leaving things that don't work for you. If you're gonna have to sit for an hour and reflect about this, that means you're not gonna be an hour on social media, or you're
Exactly.
not gonna be,
Exactly.
so the next question is how much do you really want this?
Mm-hmm. How much does it mean to you?
Huh?
Yeah. How much does it mean to you?
Correct.
Yeah. I was in, it was, you answered as I expected you to, just which it brings it back full circle how it started. It's spending less time doing those things that don't serve you. Death scrolling, doom scrolling, they call it. And sitting with yourself,
Mhm.
reflecting and being honest. That was one of the first things you said. Be honest with yourself. It's going to be uncomfortable. But that's how you then learn what you want, what you need, and how then to set your boundaries.
Mhm.
Very simple, very difficult in terms of the level and degree of uncomfortableness. But the dividends, what it pays, what you get in return for that, it can, and in the residual, because once we
Hmm.
know what we need and are able to set those boundaries, then the benefits become exponential in terms of what we are now preventing from occurring, that we no longer have to subject ourselves to drain. It's like you almost have the same amount of income, but now it goes so much further.
Exactly. Exactly. You, yeah, that's exactly what it is. You have the same energy, but then now it's like, oh my gosh, that's what boundaries do. It's like they expand what you can do with it.
So why would we not? Is that important to you? And it's a choice, and it's a choice that we can make if it's important
Yes.
enough. And wow, so much to say about that. But anyway, any any
The
parting?
the deep choices, like again, it's kind of you it's a reflective process, which can be very simple and you can list it out, but then it involves so much depth and so much of facing your fears of not being loved by others and not fitting in when you draw boundaries with your friends and not missing out on the posts when you do it on social media and um well not being seen by your leaders if you don't participate in the 40 projects that you're being brought into. um I don't know, like people, like, like not being relevant in whatever
Mm,
world you think you are relevant. And this whole
perception.
thing that we think like, oh my God, we're so vital and important in other people's lives. And it's like, well, let me tell you something. It's very interesting. That's a very interesting mindset. And I'd say, we have to approach it precisely from a mindset shift of the long-term effects that a lot of people no longer think about. It's
Mhm,
kind of that
mhm.
immediate satisfaction versus the long-term
Yes,
vision. And so it comes down to choice.
the long-term benefits for us versus the very short-lived, tiny shelf life of those perceptions that we live for and live up to. Came across something recently. It's like, it takes about 3 generations for your existence to be forgotten.
Oh yeah, I think I saw that somewhere. Like, do you know what your great great grandfather's name was? And I started thinking, and I'm like, oh shoot, like that's true. And that's why I'm saying, like, we live so much
Mm-hmm.
from the external or whatever, I or based on that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like nobody gives a fuck. Like, I'm sorry to say, but genuinely,
And if they
nobody
do in
does.
this moment, the next one, they probably won't.
Uh-huh.
Right? It that's why road rage is so absurd. These people are all, beside themselves for some little thing that occurred, and an hour later, or a week later, unless they choose to dwell there
Mhm.
in an unhealthy way, it just doesn't matter. Um, it just doesn't. But yet we are so. Oh, we'll break off in a whole other conversation. But
Yeah.
it does tie back to the ego thing, so the superior inferior. and the need for significance. And that's what
Mm,
drives things. So when we sit down and we're honest with ourselves, and why am I behaving in this manner? Why do I feel like I am an obligation? Why is this boundary? And you start asking those hard questions. And what does it really mean? And even, how much does this other individual value me? And we can say, oh yeah, that this person means the world to me. I have been to a lot of funerals. Not once
mm,
ever has, no matter how much they felt about the person being buried, not once did anyone jump in and say, I'm staying.
mm, mhm.
Truthfully, by the time the post funeral food was being consumed, that people had returned to their laughter and normal lives and disposition, only then to work through grief when it appeared. But no one stopped living, is the point I'm making,
Uh-huh.
even though this person was, meant the world to them. And I'm not saying that they didn't care, but I am saying that we are all individuals, humans,
Mhm.
with our own individual lives. And to take these trillions of brain cells and trillions of cells that make up the human body, and to have all of that focused, hyper focused on the opinion of one other individual.
Imagine.
Umpteen trillion to the math ain't mathin'.
Oh, the math ain't mathin' lately
Yeah.
in anything.
I cringe even using that trendy statement, but it doesn't add up.
Yeah, no.
The sum of who you are as an individual is much of that energy, which is, if we were on it, the time it would take to even count to that number, that trillion number, and to waste all of that on somebody else's fleeting thought, opinion, view. Because if they're judging you and they're negative towards you, you're just the moment. It's going to be the next and the next, and they're going to move on. If the with the number of thoughts that we think. So your boundaries, our boundaries, are our gold, our precious, priceless uh, assets, resource that we should put the most value on. Nobody else is, though they may respect them when we put them in place, or we set the expectation that you need to uphold these. And if you don't, well, you won't be in my life, and I won't have to worry about you upholding them because you won't be around to not uphold them. Right. Um,
It's a sacred contract with myself to preserve my inner peace.
I was going to ask you if you had any closing remarks, and that sums it up. Can you say that again?
I just came up with it and I'm like, wait, this is what it is. It's a sacred contract with myself. And then I forgot the other part. To
You
preserve my inner peace.
knew it would come back. Yes. It,
A sacred contract with myself to preserve my inner peace.
that is one loaded statement. Those the profound the words.
My celestial came down and just granted me that for a moment.
Where's the mic so I can drop it? We're done. That's it. We could have started there, but and had a 30-second podcast.
Yeah.
Nice. That I thank you. Thank you.
Thank
That
you.
was yet another phenomenal conversation. I believe in giving flowers when people are alive, and I do appreciate your authenticity, your light, your
Thank you.
genuineness, your intelligence, perspective, the critical thinking, the giving of energy that is a life force that you don't have to. You could just keep it all. You could keep all that for yourself, but you're choosing to share that with the world. Your choice when you decide to, in such eloquent, impactful ways. Um, a gift. You are a gift. So I just need to say that. I do so appreciate you. It's rare, but I'm appreciative and grateful for its existence and use. Thank you for being a guest. I'm sorry, I don't mean to make you uncomfortable in sharing that with you, but it's truth, and sometimes we
Thank
need to
you.
hear it.
Thank you, Mr. Nate. I know when you messaged me, you were like, I know you have your boundaries and I know you've been out of bandwidth. And so I just want to check in. And I'm like, no, with you, I can. Again, we go back to what feeds our soul versus what depletes us. And this feeds my soul. So I really appreciate these conversations always on and off because we we spent like 3 hours talking before actually recording, which we need to like stop doing that and just record full
I know,
on. But
right? I
then
gotta
some things are like,
press record.
but yeah, no, thank you very much. And as always, a pleasure to talk to you, to sit with you, to just laugh it off and come to these deep realizations.
Absolutely healthy. Yeah, yeah. Fills it's a cup filling experience, and that's why. Um, yeah, not a lot of time, not a lot of excess, very little, but some things are so rejuvenating that they're an investment. And we're having a conversation. We just happen to press record, and other people that get benefit of being a fly on the wall to our chat.
Yes.
And that's okay. So people are like, well, why do you do that? And I saw something the other day just resonated with me, and it said, when your life is so challenging, and you've endured or are enduring struggles that impact you in such a way where it depletes your energy, where you're managing through painful situations, when you're going through the healing journey, when you are seeking to invest in yourself, setting boundaries, growth, all very difficult things. You can find yourself feeling weak from the strenuousness that is involved in all of that. And I do what I do because I care.
Mm,
And I have found that caring gives me strength.
mm.
Not everybody will understand that. And I'm perfectly fine with that, almost prefer it. The one I want to understand that is the one who needs to hear
Mm.
it. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you.
I do so appreciate you. For those of you who are still paying attention or still watching or listening, um, just sharing some insights with you. Feel free to toss them or try them. Both of those can be correct answers, but only you can make that determination for yourself. If you have enjoyed this content and it resonated with you, please do give a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you're made aware when additional content like this when I post it. And feel free to share this with somebody who you feel might benefit from it. But most importantly, as you've heard me say, remember to let go, live now, and win.